So, we have a tougher topic today. I've seen a lot of videos about this recently showing up in my feed as of writing the script anyways, and I thought that I might tell my story. So, what was it like being depressed without a reason? Before we answer that, I have to say, looking back, however sick and horrible this sounds, I kind of laugh at myself for some of the things that I did. And I know that sounds terrible considering what I'm about to share, but I do, and I suppose it's best if you can laugh at yourself in hindsight, right? I can't pinpoint exactly when it started, but I suffered and still suffer from clinical depression. And before you guys ask, yes, I was diagnosed. Given that was a year ago, but there are still feelings that I have now that past me shares. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's still hiding there, just sitting in the back of my mind waiting for the right moment to strike for another spell. But by the title, there's obviously something else. I was, and still am, depressed. But there wasn't really anything that should have started it. I led a nice life, I have a good family, beautiful friends, and a life where I can pursue my dreams and I'm empowered by the people around me. But in thinking about it, I suffer from the fatal flaw of being an empath. The life I led specifically wasn't bad. There wasn't anything there that would start any negativity until you looked in everyone else's head. I said earlier that I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it started, and that's true. But it was most severe almost exactly a year ago. And for at least a year before that, it had been festering in my heart and mind. I was telling myself that I wasn't good enough, and I was believing it. The first major thing I noticed, thinking back, was my inability to allow myself to sleep. For months, I forced myself into an unending cycle of perpetual sleep deprivation. I wasn't good enough for me, so I was around 24/7 for people who I felt might need me. I would stay awake through the night until 4:30 every morning at the earliest, then take a nap that could only last an hour and a half at the most, get up at 6 for school, and repeat, over and over and over again, every night for months. And for a while, no one knew. I stopped eating soon after, but I never told anyone. I never let myself tell anyone. I was so tired that for the first time in my entire school career, I was falling asleep in classes. But as far as anyone else knew, I was just being a teenager. I didn't talk to people at school often in any ways. No one knew. It didn't matter. To me, how I was feeling wasn't worth it. My best friends, they were going through so much worse. My adopted siblings from the other side of the earth, things I could barely imagine. Who was I to be depressed? I didn't have a reason. What right did I have? So I kept it hidden. Gradually, I got worse and worse. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I would get home and pass out on the couch only to stay up all night long and restart. I bottled up my feelings for months, and eventually they manifested into self-harm. Then the summer came, and nearing summer, I was caught. Thankfully, my parents are understanding people. They didn't freak out, they didn't grade me for it. They were uplifting. By the end of the summer, I was feeling just a little better. I was a long way from cured, but I was getting there. Then school started again. Suddenly, my best friend's depression hit an all-time low, and I could feel it. Every tear that fell from his eyes hit me like a silver bullet, and it was painful. We made a pact, and we were caught. As a result, I was temporarily kicked out of school, which I would have been fine with, but because of that, I missed state marching championships. Suddenly, I wasn't just letting myself down. I'd just let down an entire class, my band, my people. More than that, I had just let down an entire family of people who I cared about. I didn't have a right to be sad in the first place. I shouldn't have been depressed. I shouldn't have been suicidal. But I was, and this is what it had gotten me. I've just disappointed more than myself. I disappointed everyone. And I couldn't even convince myself to at least show up to watch the competition to support them. I couldn't make myself. I knew I'd break down, and I didn't have the right. I didn't have a reason to be depressed. I couldn't be seen that weak. I couldn't afford the weakness. There was no reason, no excuse. So I stayed at home, and I cried, and I was left alone. My boyfriend was very worried about me. He managed to make me smile. I tried not to ask him for anything, and I still don't. I always told him that I'd be fine, no matter what was happening. I liked to tell myself that I wasn't lying to him, but I kind of was, because I wasn't okay, not any of that mess. But again, I didn't have the right, so why should he know? I had no good reason to be upset, to be depressed. Sure, I couldn't walk around a field and play an instrument. Did that really warrant wanting to die? My best friend was depressed. Did that warrant suicidal thoughts? The new friend who I'd just made had been through so much, needed so much that I could barely see. Did that mean I was allowed to be sad? No, I had to be strong. So, I tried to hide it for a while longer. A month passed, and my boyfriend disappeared. It had been 2 weeks without a word. I was worried to death. My mind always wanders. For all I knew, he was dead, just like I worried everyone else might be. That was the last straw for me. I lost grip on my emotions. Suddenly, everything was falling apart. The dams I had built were breaking apart, and everything was flowing out in the world's most catastrophic flood. My world's most catastrophic flood. I started to fall apart at the seams. I carried a plush to school because I knew I was going to cry. I shoved my face into that doll and sobbed too many times to count, sitting in the back of classrooms. It always felt like everyone I ever cared about was running away from me. Aside from my parents, I only had 2 constants, my 2 closest friends. And I wouldn't let myself talk to them, even when I was actually talking to them. I felt like such a burden on them. They were going through so much worse. Who was I to be burdening them with my insignificant problems? Who was I to be depressed in the wake of their problems? But I let myself anyways, because now there was no going back. I was exploding, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. The control I had tricked myself I had in the first place had completely disappeared, and now all that was left between me and buckets of tears was a thin wall of complacency. But eventually, with some hard work and time, I got better. I wasn't worthless anymore. My feelings were almost validated. Everything was almost okay. Maybe I wasn't perfect, but despite telling myself that nothing I ever felt was worth the trouble I was making it out to be in my head, I was getting better. So, what is it like being depressed without a reason? I'll tell you. It's feeling like all of your emotions are worthless in comparison to the hardships of others. It's also fighting yourself. People tell stories about fighting battles against hardships, bullies, abusers, predators. But what happens when you yourself are your own bully, your own abuser? How do you really combat that? I'm here to tell you that it's not easy, but it's possible. Your feelings, no matter how large or small, are worth your time. If you're feeling this way, you need to tell someone, for your own sake, because no matter how bad someone else feels, your feelings can feel just as bad, if not worse, to you. Everyone's experience is different, which is why we should never compare our own experiences to another's. Your emotions and someone else's are not the same. They do not amount to anything in comparison. If you hurt inside the way I did, seek guidance. Just talk to someone, because bottling up your feelings isn't worth it. And if you're stuck in that situation like I was, then know it's okay to be sad. Know that life is worth it. It's hard, and it gets harder, but the wonderful feeling of finally getting away, of finally being happy, is all the better once you get there, because you have to get there first. I'm here for you, and I'm sure there's someone out there you can reach out to. Just be strong, because every human spirit is strong. No one crushes your spirit but you.